Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Intentional Conversations podcast. I am Dr. Nika White, your host and the founder and lead principal consultant for NWC, Nika White Consulting. And we have been expecting you and are so glad that you're here with us today. I want to let you know that we love to see all the different geographies that are represented among our community. So please take a moment, go to the chat. If you're joining us on LinkedIn Live, go to the comment section. Let us know where you are joining the conversation from today. I look forward to engaging with our guest co host. And I want to let you know before we actually get started with that conversation that here at NWC, we really do value disability inclusion. And as such, we have enabled closed caption feature for those that would have their experience enhanced through closed caption. So wanted to make sure that you knew you could enable that. I also want you to know that here at NWC, we are celebrating the 5th-year anniversary of Intentional Conversations podcast. And so we're super excited about that milestone. And as such, we've been celebrating all year long in small and bigger ways. But we invite you to also celebrate with us. It's no small feat getting to 5 years, and we do not take that lightly. We've done so with the support and help of this broader community. And so we're incredibly grateful. If you're joining us on Zoom and you would love to have your cameras on, we love to see smiling faces, but it's certainly not required. We're just glad you're here in whatever capacity. And of course, for those who are joining us through the live streaming on LinkedIn Live, we're making sure that we're keeping your sentiments, your expressions, your thoughts and questions connected to this broader group. And we do so by watching the comment section very closely and bringing that over into our Zoom chat so that we can be connected as one big group. Once again, you have joined Intentional Conversations podcast. We're so glad you're here. Sit back, enjoy the show, and we look forward to introducing our formal guest co-host today. Let the conversation begin, and that is precisely what we are about to do. If you're just tuning in, you have joined the Intentional Conversations podcast. We are officially in the month of August. It is August 1st, and that means that now it's an opportunity for us to amplify new and different national observances that take place during this particular month. And so August is National Black Business Month. And so I want to amplify that. As a Black woman-owned business myself, I think it's critically important for us to always lean into opportunities to amplify the need for economic inclusion. And that means supporting Black-owned businesses. And so wanted to make sure that I place that into your hearing. And I am saluting all Black-owned businesses who are out there doing the thing. August 9th, we're going to be actually recognizing International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. And so this is important, another international recognition, not just national, but international. And this is a day set aside to recognize and celebrate and honor the history, heritage, cultures, and contributions of Indigenous peoples in a given country. And so if you did not know, now you do. And I hope that you will find some ways to even build up deeper knowledge and understanding of Indigenous peoples so that you can be able to stand in solidarity and support that community. Okay. Now, one of the things we also like to do at NWC is just share some of our opportunities that are upcoming for you to have in your consideration set and take advantage of. We have been talking about Boundless for quite some time now. We have already launched phase 1, and we're excited for the women that have already connected with us as part of phase 1. Now we're into phase 2, and phase 2 is the membership subscription model. We wanted to have a way to make this accessible to a broader population of people, and so you can join Boundless. The website is boundless.nikawhite.com. That's where you can learn more, and you can also register and secure your spot. And this is a women of color community where we focus in on well-being, empowerment, and leadership. Lots of amplification around emotional regulation and embodied leadership. And we're doing so in community with others that are going to help protect and create this safe space and landing for each of us. So I hope that you will consider joining us or sharing this with those in your network that would gain value. Now, if you happen to not just join us every week for Intentional Conversations podcast live, but you also want to get the content on the go, you have a way to do that. We extract the audio from Intentional Conversations each week, and we make it available in podcast capacity for wherever you like to get your podcasts. And so I want you to make sure that you are aware of that. I think that is a great way for us to extend the reach of our community. And I know some folks, they are not able to always join us during this stationary time every Friday. But this also gives me a chance to remind you that even if you cannot join us live, but you really like the value of being able to see the videos and the conversations happening in real time, that visual is important for so many people that I want you to know you can always catch the replays on our YouTube channel. So not to worry, there's so many ways in which you can get this content. Now, it's the time that I will give you a heads up for what you have to look forward to in future weeks in terms of guest co host here on Intentional Conversations. And I'm super excited because on next Friday, August 8th, Mickey Bay is going to be joining as my guest co host. And we're going to be talking about emotional regulation. And I am so looking forward to that conversation. So I hope that you will mark your calendars and join us or catch the replay or the podcast version. And then mid August, we are actually going to be welcoming LaShawn Davis. And in that conversation, it's going to be all about transforming outdated HR practices. She has a very keen philosophy on there's some things we've been doing from an HR perspective that needs to change and they need to change now. And so I look forward to hearing from LaShawn Davis and hope that you will be there with us in the middle of the month to hear that conversation. Okay, now this is a part of the show where I get the distinct pleasure of actually formally introducing our guest co host. If you've been with us, you know that I like to read the official bio because I think it's incredibly important for people to understand the credentials, the experiences, the accolades, all the things that the individual who is our guest co host shows up to the conversation with, making them very much a voice of authority on that topic. And so I will extend that pleasure today as well by reading Dr. Rosalind Cohen's bio. Dr. Roz Cohen is passionate about creating cultures where everyone feels a sense of belonging. With over 2 decades of HR leadership experience at organizations including Disney and Bank of America Securities, she now serves as Chief People Officer at L&W Advisors. Previously, Dr. Roz led Socius Strategies, and Socius actually stands for ally in Latin. I didn't know that. She shared it with me, so I wanted to share it with you. Her consulting firm, and it focused on inclusive leadership and employee engagement. Dr. Roz holds a PhD in leadership and change and is a senior professional in human resources. Her current project is writing her book, Hiring for Engagement: How to Create a Culture of Belonging. When she's not traveling, adjusting to having adult-ish children, I can relate, I have adult children, are exploring new cuisines. And so find those affirmations, those emojis, those reactions, those words of welcome. And let's let Dr. Roz know how much we appreciate her being here with us today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can bring Dr. Roz into the spotlight. And Dr. Ross, before I release you to greet this audience in your own way, we do have a tradition here at Intentional Conversations, and that is where we ask our guest co-hosts as they are finding the words that they would like to use to welcome the audience, to share something with us that we would not know by hearing your bio, which we've just done, or by looking at your LinkedIn profile. Welcome, Dr. Ross.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and so excited to have this conversation. Now I'm trying to think of what's something you wouldn't know. Um, okay, this is a little personal, but why not? I have 7 tattoos. That's you would not know that
Love
from
it.
my LinkedIn bio or necessarily from
No,
looking at
no,
me.
we wouldn't. And nor just by having this visual of you, because they're
Right.
not visible to us right now, but you have 7. Wow, that's fantastic. So tell us, what is your favorite tattoo and why?
Um, my favorite tattoo is my children's names on my ribs.
Oh,
That's was a painful experience, sort of like motherhood, but it was worth it.
I love that. And yes, such an appropriate place for it as well. Well, thank you. Thank you for giving us that personal tidbit about yourself. We are gracious. So I want to jump right in, and I know that the hour always goes by really, really fast. But I want to start by really just having you to give us a little bit more of your background and your journey, and that's going to help us to really kind of set ourselves up to understand where to take the conversation from there. So, what led you to the space of HR leadership?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I didn't know HR even existed as a thing and as something you could do. So I always joke that I was a nice Jewish girl from Long Island. And so what nice Jewish girls do is either they become doctors or they marry doctors. It's one of the two. So originally I was going to be an MD. And then went to college and bombed organic chemistry and didn't know what I was going to do. All of a sudden, that part of my identity and who I thought I was going to be was gone. So I liked my psych class, got a degree in psychology. And those of us who have degrees in psychology know there's very little you can do with a bachelor's in psych. But what I found was I had had some problems at home as a child, as a teenager, and a young adult. And I wanted to move out of my house, but didn't necessarily have the funds to do that. So I became a resident advisor or an RA on a
Yeah.
college campus, right?
Yeah.
Great way to figure out how to move out of your house and not deal with some of the chaos. So it worked. And then I found out about this whole field of student affairs. And so that's really where the journey started for me. Got a master's degree in public and educational management and started working on college campuses. So I worked at Stony Brook University, Ball State University, University of Delaware, University of Oregon, and then ended up in San Francisco at USF. And really loved the work, loved working with college students. But things changed and I made this weird pivot to working in banking. And I didn't know what a bond or a stock was. Couldn't quite get like, what was that ticker that ran at the bottom of NBC? Like, not a clue, not a clue. But ended up growing my career over the course of the past 20 some odd years in finance and ended up here. Decided that I wanted to still get the PhD. And so I did that about 7 years ago now, graduated about 3 or 4 years ago. And that's how I ended up here. Sort of a very circuitous kind of path and very opportunistic. Like I took jobs because I'm like, well, that sounds cool. I've never done that before. Let's try it. A lot of fake it till you make it. A lot of fake it till you make it.
I'm sure so many of us here can actually, really align with what you're sharing with us. So let me check did my picture go away for you? Because it went away for me.
It did. I see your profile shot, the one that you
Okay,
have
that's
up.
odd. Let me see if this is gonna fix. Okay, great.
There you
I wanted to make sure it wasn't just on my end. I was like, before I switch this, let me just double check. Okay, great. Thank you. So I love that. Thank you for taking us through your story. And I think that it is commonplace for many people to not have this linear path of what they
go.
want to do, and that they follow all these steps to get to that end of idealistic goal. And so strong academia background
Yep.
that also then went into finance and did some work on your own as a consultant, and now you're back in-house with an organization. So I love it. I want to jump right in and I want to talk about the engagement trifecta because
Yep.
that's part of how you show up to the work that you care so deeply about. Thinking, feeling, and belonging, right? That's
Yep.
the trifecta. So why do you think that so many organizations stop at the thinking part? Because I noticed this too in my practice and my work. And how can they begin to shift toward a more holistic approach to engagement that brings in the belonging factor? Because it's hard for anyone to feel like they can show up at their best and really engage if they're questioning, do I belong here? Am I seen? Am I valued? Am I heard? Right? Do I have full opportunity for success? So I'd love for you to unpack your trifecta phenomenon for us, please.
Yeah, happy to do it. So my research, I'll give you the research and then I'll give you the practical. So the research
Okay.
finds that there are 3 different types of engagement. Uh, at least mine has found. It is the I think, I belong, and I feel. So when we think to walk through what those are, the I belong is that connection you feel to an organization, the way in which an organization allows you or supports you in that connection that you can feel. The way in which when you walk in the office, it's not, oh God, I'm gotta go to work, but it's like, cool, I get to hang out with people I enjoy, people I care about, people I work well with. So that's that I belong piece. The I feel is that internal satisfaction. It's when you get that job done, or when you do that project, or when you go into the break room and you're like, these are people that I care about, and these are people that I enjoy working with. That's the I feel piece. It's the I thinking stuff that I find is fascinating because the first two, the ones that I just mentioned, you can affect that based upon how managers act. If managers act in an inclusive way and act with inclusivity in their behaviors, creating space for a variety and all identities to show up, you have some, as an organization, control over that, right? You can teach managers how to be inclusive leaders. What you can't do is teach the I think portion of it. And that really is an internal piece. It is what academically, intellectually stimulates me doing my job, right? Whether it is the constant, whether you're one of those data people and you like doing data stuff, whether you are creative and it's that part that excites you, but it's that piece that organizations and managers cannot control at all. So what I think we do as organizations is we focus almost too much, maybe not too much. We focus on managers and the training for them and being inclusive leaders, but how do we create a real clear picture for a candidate and an employee on the I thinking side? And that's sort of where I think we can do a better job as companies, as recruiters, as HR people. What I have found, and in my own work, like I am guilty of this as well, we get the call from the manager, oh gosh, so-and-so just resigned. We got 2 weeks. So what happens, right? All of a sudden the wheels go into effect. What do? You then pick up the job description, you look at the job description, you ask the manager, is this right? They say yes. Then you take a couple of tweaks at it, throw it up on LinkedIn and a variety of other boards, get the resumes, look at the resumes, have people ask questions, whether you do a standardized process or not, and we hire somebody. But we never take this pause. Once we get that call from that manager who has that panic in their voice, like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? We don't say, okay, let's look at this job and this job description with some critical lens. Or do we, first of all, do we need this job anymore? Is this the role? And if we don't, what is the role? If we do, are these the right things that the person does day in, day out? And so by walking through really what the role is and what the job is that is needed, we can create an opportunity for people to really connect with it and then activate the thinking side of engagement. Is this something that is really going to create a space where people feel like they are intellectually challenged? So that's the part that's fascinating for me.
No, I so appreciate that. It's fascinating for me too. And I'm leaning in because this is not a conversation, to your point, that occurs quite often. We talk about belonging, we talk about engagement, but what I'm hearing that is a little different is, at least most of the conversations that I'm in related to belonging, there is this huge sense of responsibility, which we agree on this, of the people leader, right? The manager, the leadership team, to create and foster the belonging. And it sounds like through the approach that you're taking, where we're really trying to foster this deeper level of thinking, that then empowers the individual employee to also share in the co-creation and the accountability of being able to lean fully into that belonging, right? And what I love about that, Dr. Oz, which I'm sure you're like, this is why this is my research. This is why I'm talking about it and crusading for it, because it's not being expressed enough. But what I love about it is that I am a believer of shared accountability. I am a believer of co-creating those types of environments and experiences. And while I'm also a believer that the greatest responsibility often lies with leaders, right? Because they're the ones who are often influencing systems and culture and all the things, right? So that's where it starts, because that's where the influence is. I do not at all think that it means it needs to be an absence of the responsibility, some kind of shared responsibility on the part of the individual. So I want to go deeper into that point right there, please.
I think you're right. I think over the course of the past 10 or 15 years, we have put a lot of the accountability on organizations to say, how can we create a space where people feel connected, where diverse thoughts, ideas, and identities can show up and feel like they belong? What we don't do is we don't engage in a relationship with the employee on how to do that. So it what I think happens is there becomes this feeling of uh, imparting, or like sort of this overlord kind of experience where the organization has to be standing over and making these decisions without it saying, look, Dr. White, you and I are going to work together. You are the employer, I am the employee. What can we do to create a relationship between us that accounts for respect and mutuality and individuality, but also allows us to have that shared responsibility versus it just being on your part as the employer or me as the employee. I don't think we do that a lot. We have a lot more employers needing, or the feeling that employers must do certain things, but without having that shared responsibility piece. And look, let's be clear, right? If you don't have any skin in the game, it's really easy to just sort of take it for granted. My philosophy, for example, on benefits is benefits should never be 100% paid for by the employer, because there needs to be skin in the game by the employee. People need to have a shared ownership and accountability for it. So from my perspective, it's that relationship, that building of that relationship that becomes critical.
Yeah, some of the language that I often like to use, and this audience has heard this before, is how do we set ourselves up for success? And when we use language like that, it automatically is positioning whatever the situation is or the opportunity is for both parties to have that level of accountability, because we're trying to not only just make you successful, but how are we setting the relationship up for success? Now, I do want to take a different approach to this conversation, because there could be many in the audience that's listening in that's thinking, well, I wonder about this. I'm curious about this. So I'm gonna try to bring that curiosity to the fore. And that is, my words, not yours. I do believe that there is this sense of entitlement where, yes, this is more of your responsibility, XYZ company and XYZ leadership team, right? I agree with that. But when it comes to thinking about the respect factor, the allowing me to have full opportunity for success, all the things that I think shows up in conversations that relate or adjacent in some capacity to equity and inclusion and a culture of belonging where people feel like they have a full sense of all the things, right? It almost, for many people, I would imagine, especially those on the margin, it kind of begs the question, the curiosity then surfaces of, do I have to have a conversation to help land at what treating me with dignity and respect and inclusion and full opportunity for success? I mean, I can go on and on, but do you see where I'm going with this? It's like, because I hear that a lot. As a woman of color, I will tell you, I do hear that a lot, Dr. Boz. It's like, I am tired. I am exhausted of having to tell you to treat me like a human.
Right.
So I just
Totally.
want to lean into that as we are, engaging in this really important conversation.
Yeah. So you should never have to ask someone to treat you with respect and dignity
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
worth, right? That should never be the case. That should be something we show up with, and we don't do it well at times. But there can be a conversation between the employee and the manager that says, what does that look like for you? What are the ways that would be most both beneficial and empowering for you on how I can treat you in ways that may be different than the level set. So for example, not speaking over you should be a done deal. Like that should not be
Mhm.
a something we have to negotiate. But if there are specific aspects of how you want to be treated with respect that would empower you and make you feel heard and valued, then let's have that conversation. Uh, I think about it as when we first have a working relationship with anyone, one of the questions we should ask is, tell me a little bit about how you want to be recognized, right? There are some
Mhm.
people that I want you to stand up on the table in the middle of a town hall or staff meeting and say, Dr. White did this amazing thing. She crushed it. I want everybody to give her a hand, right? And so everybody's clapping for you. And that makes you feel good and seen and valued. If you're an introvert, that does the exact opposite for you. You do not want to be seen and heard in that way, but having a conversation with you, giving you a note, doing something else that's less external is valued more. So I do think there has to be a conversation that happens about what that looks like for you that would make you feel most seen and heard.
Yeah, this is so good. I'm jotting down notes as you were talking that I wanted to circle back on, and because I know a little bit about your work in preparation for today, I knew that that's where you were going to go with it. But because I also hear the curiosity that I shared, I wanted to just make sure that we were able to kind of address that. Yes, I want to just reiterate that everyone is entitled to that work of humanity, being treated with dignity and respect. What I love about the clarification you're bringing to this philosophy that you are crusading for is that we need to just lean into more conscious leadership and start having more direct conversations that's going to yield good intel that allows us to be best positioned to support the people in which we are in work relationships with, point blank. And so, we can call this belonging, we can call this, conscious leadership, we can call this people management, we can call this whatever, but that is just about it's relational. It's about relationship building, right? And why do you think that so many people shy away from having those direct conversations? I mean, I love what you said. What does that look like for you? Because even though we all may have our definitions of, recognition, of self advocacy, of coaching, all of that has a spectrum, and it's
Yep.
so nuanced based upon the individual. And so, why do you think that doesn't happen? Because it seems so simple. Why does that not happen to the extent and the frequency in which it should?
It's a great question. I think it's fear. Um, Particularly in this political environment that we live in
Yeah,
currently. I think people are afraid to say something or do something that could either hurt someone else or that will put the spotlight on them, this cancel culture kind of piece. I think
yeah,
people are afraid. Uh, the problem is not the problem. Let me say that differently. It really comes from a foundation of trust and respect, right?
yeah,
I trust that you're going to ask me a question that is honestly from a place of curiosity versus judgment.
yeah.
Then I'll answer whatever you want to know, right? Because I'm not afraid and you're not afraid.
Right.
But
Right.
but if there is not that level of trust there, if we have not established that over the course of time, because that is something that doesn't happen, like you don't just turn that on. But if we,
Absolutely.
right, if we don't establish it, it's hard for me
Yeah.
to know where you're coming from. Again, particularly in the environment that we live in right now politically. So I do think it's a fear aspect. I think it's um, a piece of how do I say this in a way that you trust where I'm coming from is from curiosity versus judgment.
Yeah. What is the intent behind this question? What is the intent
Exactly.
behind this conversation? If I really feel like it is to help set me up for success, I'm going to be truthful and honest because that means that you're going to align your support and whatever that you could bring as your shared accountability in alignment with what really is the need. And something that I've noticed of late is that this definitely takes us out of this notion that there's a one size fit all kind of leadership management approach because it's not. And I keep repeating that every chance I get, and I think a lot of leaders they run from that because it sounds like work because it is work, right? But it's work worth working for. We no longer can just say, okay, this is how I'm leading, this is how I'm managing, this is how I am. Now let's go. It has to be really taking the time to meaningfully and purposely have those in-depth conversations and then adjusting accordingly. And for someone who may have, 100 people under their purview, it's kind of hard to do, but you have to just make sure that you're finding some way to have the trickle down effect to where that philosophy is definitely embedded into the culture.
I think about the very old school, I'm calling it old school, sort of white philosophy of the golden rule, which is do unto
Yeah.
others as you have them, as you would
On
have,
to you.
right?
Yeah.
That's not the right answer.
No longer applies. Yes.
No, it's do unto others as they would like to have done unto them.
Yes.
It's a shift. It's not about me knowing what you need best. It's about me asking you what works for you and being
Yeah.
vulnerable. Like you can read all the stuff about from Brene Brown, but being vulnerable enough to be able to say, I don't know, but I want to, and I want to show up for you in a way that is genuine and authentic. How do I do that? Well, I've got to ask you questions versus assuming that I know because you have a particular identity or don't have a particular identity.
Right. Right. I think that also has a lot to do with our nature to be conditioned to be more reactionary than proactive. We'll just wait for something to happen and then we'll say, well, tell me about this versus
Yep.
let's try to prevent those hard, tough conversations, not because we are, you know, against having healthy conflicts. I think healthy conflict strengthens us as well. But how do we, again, how are we setting each other up for success? How are we setting the relationship up for success and aligning on the expectations so that we can best kind of, coexist in an environment where everyone is really meeting the mark? Okay, so I want to talk about your book that you're working on right now. So you have to give us a timing on which it's going to be released. The title is Hiring for Engagement:
Yep.
How to Create a Culture of Belonging. So give us the timing of release and also a little bit of a sneak peek into what hiring with engagement in mind actually looks like. Because again, we want to make this practical without giving all the goods away, because you're going to have to get the book once Dr. Roz's book drops. And why does it matter more than ever now?
Yeah. So we're playing a little with the title. As a matter of fact, I'm going back and forth between two different titles. One is hiring for engagement. The other is the talent engagement dilemma. So if anybody on this
Ooh.
who's listening to this has a feeling of what they think, I'd love to hear perspective. Tell me which title you like better.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick poll right here. I'm going to ask my team to actually get that up. So whether
Oh,
you
okay,
place
great.
like the inquiry into the chat or you actually create a poll, whatever the case may be. But I'm hearing that the first one that you're toying with is hiring for engagement, and then of course it has a follow-on. But then let's just put hiring for engagement versus what is it? The talent engagement dilemma. I know what my favorite is.
Yeah, I would love to
Okay.
hear because some people saying something, some people saying another. But in regardless, there is a book that's going to come out probably within the next 4 months. Um,
Okay, awesome.
and what it does, it so what we talk about is a lot of the conversation that we're having right now around this the trifecta of engagement, how companies focus more on the manager side and training managers versus taking a step back and saying, are we looking at this job and are we positioning this job so that it attracts and engages people before they ever walk in the door, before they ever show up in the
Yeah.
organization. So, and it talks about how to do that. We also talk a
They have
little
to,
bit.
and by the way, they have to do that realistically, because I know of a lot of people that'll say, well, the job wasn't what it kind of posted to be. And so when I went in, it was like, oh, totally different. So yes, that only works if it's really in alignment with the actual reality. Go
That's
ahead.
exactly right. And that's why having look, if you have the opportunity to talk with the person who's leaving, to be able to say, I know this is what the job description says. Tell me what you do on a daily basis. Who do you interact with? What are the skills that you use? What are the tasks that you accomplish? That may be exactly what the job is, but it's probably highly likely that there's more to it or it has shifted over time,
Of
right? And
course.
then it's just the reality.
Yeah.
And then we talk with the people who engage with this person on a daily or regular basis. So we get that information as well. So we take that piece, we create the job, which then engages the right people to apply for it. So you're already hitting a mark and you're already accounting for a level of engagement or a type of engagement that managers can't impact. And
Mm.
that's the key piece to it, right? It doesn't matter how inclusive of a leader you are or how trustworthy you may be. If the job is not what hits the person as something that will challenge them and stimulate them intellectually, you're lost before you start. So that's a lot of what the book talks about. We also cover some things around AI and ways in which we should and can and maybe shouldn't be using AI in people management.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of aspects to it. I think, and I'm a very pragmatic HR person. Um, I don't, I don't, we can be academic all we want to, and you and I both know, right? We have the academic street cred. Like
Mhm.
we've done the dissertations, we have written all this
Yes.
stuff. But if you can't do anything with it, I don't want to engage in an academic conversation just for the sake of it. So it's a very
Yeah.
pragmatic thing. There are going to be like what I would call tear out sheets that you can have, and you'll be able to hand this to somebody and say, do this. So
Mhm.
that's the other piece of it. I didn't want to write a book that was going to look pretty on a shelf.
I love that. I love the tear out piece kind of idea too. I don't think I've ever seen that in a book. So that is awesome. So we
There
do
you go.
have a couple of responses in the chat, and right now it's 50-50. So sorry we couldn't be of much help, but maybe others are still percolating on it. And we'll get some more responses into the chat. So let's talk about the concept of cultural fit.
Mm,
Um, you shared a powerful story about the NYC doorman whose
yep,
experience didn't look part, right? And we encounter a lot of those situations where we're like, oh, so you're that person, you're in that role, because they don't look the part, whatever that means. So how can companies rethink hiring criteria to focus on what truly predicts success?
yep. So it's a great story, and it's written in the book, so I'm not going to share more of it here this way. If you want to hear about the doorman, you'll be able to read it in the book. But what I think we can do, and what we should be doing, is instead of saying that this is what we need to look at is the behaviors of success that show up in an organization. So what I mean by that is, if we look at the people who are most successful in the organization, what are the behaviors that they exhibit that connect to the organization's values more and vision, that allow them to be successful? I call these things threshold attributes. And how I look at it is, if you're a company that makes widgets, you're going to focus on people who are able to make those widgets, right? You're not going to focus on integrity. You're not going to train somebody to have integrity. You're not going to train someone to be intellectually curious. Those are not the things that you as an organization have time to teach. You can adapt them. You can help mold them into the way that looks best for success in your organization, but you can't teach them. So in the doorman's case, what we look for, let's say, is intellectual curiosity, or the ability to deal with different types of people throughout an organization. Well, if those are the behaviors that we want to see, it should not matter how that person achieves them. It doesn't matter whether they were a doorman or the president of their fraternity or sorority. It shouldn't matter whether or not they had worked in a retail environment their entire college career, because that's how they got through college. But they know how to interact with people regardless of any identity. So if we know what those attributes are of success, then it shouldn't matter where we find them. What should matter is that someone exhibits them. So in the doorman's case, the ability to be able to interact, which was critical in this role, be able to interact with a variety of people who came at the world from different places, that didn't matter whether they had been a doorman or had worked at a retail environment or was a country club kid. Didn't make a difference. So
Mm.
that's the piece of it. And I apologize that the dog has decided to
Listen,
shut.
I saw your reaction. I thought she's probably going to apologize. This is real life, and I love the puppy in the background. Let me just say, I saw one go this way, and I saw one come this direction. And I love it.
Everybody, this is Colin. Colin is the
Hi,
dog.
Colin.
Here he is.
Colin is a cutie. No, I love what you just said. Now, so we're going to shift in a little bit and take some comments and questions from the audience. I wanted to go ahead and put that out there. So for those who would like to contribute, you can start thinking about that. If you're on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature that lets me know that I can call on you. And if your camera's on, I'll add you to the spotlight. I'll invite you to unmute yourself and share. Or just simply place your comments, questions into the chat. If you're on LinkedIn Live, place your questions and comments also into the comment section. And of course, we'll bring that over. But I want to go back to something, and this is really just to reconcile some of the tension points that we often hear about culture fit.
Yep.
And this is something that I know particularly impacts people who are on the margins, right? Is that if we aren't careful, culture fit can then become people behave and look like mainstream. And usually, mainstream is the dominant culture that's represented in that organization. And usually, the dominant culture will have this ideology of what professionalism is. And so that can turn into specific behaviors. And that is not indicative necessarily across the board. And so I'm loving this dialogue. And I just want us to go a little bit deeper in consideration of that point.
Yeah. You're right. When we talk about culture fit, so many times it's the culture of the dominant, whatever that might be. If you're in an
Yeah.
all-female organization, it could be another woman. If you are in an all-white or a very prominent, predominant white organization, it could be that. But what so when there was this thing that was going around a while ago, you may remember, I want to hire people who I feel like I can have a beer with at the airport, or who I can pick some sort of social environment that you
Yeah.
feel comfortable in engaging with this person. Truth be told, I there are a bunch of people who I love working with that I don't want to have a beer with, that I have no interest in doing that. So it's the culture fit piece becomes can become a way of saying people like me, way of people who I
Yes. Yeah.
that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking
Mhm.
about are behaviors of success. What are
Mm.
behaviors of success in the organization, regardless of where someone learns those behaviors? So I don't care if you learned how to engage with a bunch of people or varieties of different types of people as a doorman or whatever else. The fact that you know how to treat people with respect, which would be inherent to being able to engage with different types of people, to be able to meet people where they are and have a real conversation, that's the critical piece of it. So culture fit should be more along the lines of behavior and organizational values than it is about this whole I want to have a beer with somebody at an airport or whatever. First of all, I don't like
Yeah.
it, so that's irrelevant.
Yeah, there's a lot of reframing of cultural fit. And one thing that I've used and I've even heard others use is cultural add. And that really is to make sure that people are not falling into the trap of this sameness. And that's what makes you valuable for being a part of this organization as a fit. You can be an add where there's a lot of differences, right, from the dominant culture and
Totally.
still, be able to provide that add. Do you think that it can be tricky when we are using cultural fit as a way to think about behaviors of success if we aren't careful to consider that we have to be very unbiased as we think about what are those behaviors that we are assigning as the litmus test. And so I like the fact that you said associated with the values of the organization, because I
Yep.
think that that is a way to keep people within this safe container to where they don't unintentionally go to a place of bias just because they are conditioned to think about certain skill sets or behaviors in a way that really is only mostly associated with one particular population and they
Right.
can't, see outside of that. So I'm appreciating this conversation. Okay, so one comment that I just want to amplify. It frustrates me when I hear cultural fit when it shows up as I like this person because they seem cool. I know. I know. I
Mm.
say all the time. People say, so and so is doing this, doing that, and these are complaints or criticisms. And it's like, well, did you talk to them about it? Well, no, because they're so nice, they're so kind. This person brings in the greatest baked goods every week and we all enjoy them. Oh, yes, I'm just getting the job done. At the end of the day, all of that is great, and I don't want to negate any of that, but it's the person getting the job done. And I think that's critically important. We do have to make sure that we're checking ourselves as we're starting to become agitated or frustrated with certain colleagues, and really to interrogate, is it because there's a personality thing or a
That's
style
right.
difference? Or,
That's right.
so that that
Right.
doesn't then drive these tension points. Would you
Well,
like to add on to that?
yeah, no, I totally agree because that's really about self realization and being honest with yourself, right? Why
Yeah,
do I like this person? Well, I like them because they bring in the baked goods, or do I like them because they do their job? And if are there other factors that I'm considering that have absolutely nothing to do with the role that they have to play in the organization, with the skills they have, right? So you have to be a little vulnerable with yourself and asking yourself the question like, why? Right? I like to think of it as the why behind the why, right? What
yeah.
is it that you're really getting at or you're trying to get at that may not be readily apparent?
The why behind the why. I love that. There's actually even kind of an exercise or a practice that I know circulates out there into different leadership groups that talks about you need to ask why at least 3 times. Keep
Yep,
drilling it down. Why, why,
totally.
why? And that's when
Yeah,
you really get the full answer,
that's
right?
exactly.
So you mentioned the word vulnerability, and I'm not seeing any hands up or questions yet. So I want to keep rolling while we have some
Please.
time
Yeah.
left in our hour. But you mentioned vulnerability, so it was a great kind of setup for this next question that I have for you, Dr. Roz. What role does vulnerability play in leadership today, especially when we think about how it relates to building cultures of belonging? And I'm sure you've had to model this in your own career. So maybe share with us some direct stories that
Yeah.
really is amplified for you when you think about this question.
Yeah, vulnerability is critical. If you think of the evolution of leadership, you started with the white man theory, which is really what that was, right? Where I knew exactly what to do and I told you what to do, and that's how things were. Versus, and so there was no vulnerability, right? It was like I
Yeah.
did, I told, you did. That was it. It was just sort of this
Yes.
one way kind of thing. But when we really think about what works is when we can act as humans and show our vulnerability in ways that are value add to the experience, to the conversation, to the organization. What you do is you create that relationship, right? It all
Yeah.
comes back to creating relationships, whether it is professional or personal. How do you show up in a way that, how do you show up with vulnerability so that you seem authentic and genuine to the person that you're working with, right? Or that you're having the conversation with. I'm thinking about some times where I had no idea of the answer of something, right? And those
Yeah.
are many. There are many times. And so I try, not always, but I try to come at the conversation from a here's what I know and here's what I don't. And I'm going to share with you what I don't know because I want you to share with me where you don't know it. And together, we're going to be able to come to the best decision we can, or the best solution we can, or whatever that might be. Um, I'll give you one from early in my career. I was interviewing, again, going back to Bank of America Securities, where I first started. Again, no idea, nothing, right? But it was going to fake it till you make it kind of experience. So sitting in this room. Um, and because it was the equity research department, we were up early, right? Like you had to work on New York Stock Exchange hours. So 5:30 in the morning, I'm there for an interview, coffee in hand, clearly. And I'm having a conversation with the person who's interviewing me, and they are talking. First of all, she's looking off at a screen on the other side. And I'm like, well, how rude is that? Why is she looking at that screen? I didn't realize she's looking at the market, right? And seeing what's happening. Didn't ask the question because you didn't want to feel bad. But she starts talking about Fannie and Freddie. And I'm thinking, okay, now, you immediately go to that. What does that mean? Should I have studied Fannie and Freddie?
Well,
Who are
you're trying to figure out who's Fannie and Freddie?
who's Fannie and Freddie? Who's Fannie and Freddie? Like, oh my gosh, that's not the president of the company? Is it the president of the company? Is this right? So I'm going through this in my head. So I
I am
could,
so tickled by this, by the way.
I, so I'll explain who Fannie and Freddie are in a second. So I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, you have, because she's talking about them a lot.
Yeah.
Two choices, Roz. You could either nod along with like absolute intent, like, oh, absolutely sure, or you can be vulnerable and say you have no idea who Fannie and Freddie are. And I chose the latter. It turns out the person I was talking to, their expertise was in finance, and so they were talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie
Yeah.
Mac.
Yes.
Okay,
Well, that's why I said I was tickled.
right, but I didn't know that. I was
I'm
like,
like, I think I would have done the lap. I would have kept faking it at that point. But it's only because I know Fannie Mae, Freddie Mae. Okay, keep going.
right, but this is what so I'm turned to her and I said, I apologize for asking this question if this is something that I should know, but I don't know who Fannie and Freddie are. And I'm sorry. And so she laughed and she explained to me who Fannie and Freddie were. And so I knew enough to know that, okay, that has to do with loans and student loans and all the other stuff. So I knew enough to know that once she said it, I could relate and then catch up on the conversation. Years later, this was a person who I ended up being friends with. I was at Bank of America Securities for 7 years. And one of the things she said to me was, one of the reasons she liked me and wanted me to get hired was because I showed that vulnerability, because I didn't fake or BS my way through the conversation, because I had been vulnerable and was willing to say, I don't know this, I need some help. That was something that she appreciated in a leader. So it's a great example. I think of it, I still giggle at times, like, who who knew? I mean, I came from academia. I worked on college campuses. I didn't know who Fannie and Freddie were. Could have
Yeah.
been.
Yeah. And it sounds like maybe for that role, they were looking for someone who was able to come in with like a blank slate that could bring some value that maybe had been missed before. So, I mean, yeah, I'm definitely am tracking, but thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that story. And so when we talk, as we're talking about vulnerability, I do think that there is a follow-on directly to trust, the trust factor, which you touched on earlier, which leads and fuels belonging. If I feel like I can trust you, I feel like I can have that psychological safety to really be able to state, what my challenges are, and know that you're going to receive it in a way because your intentions are to help me, kind of bringing it all full circle. And I think that the days are over for us to see vulnerability as a sign of weakness in our leaders, but to see it as a way of endearing themselves and being relatable and human
Yep.
that, really just helps build those bridges and foster, deeper, greater relationships. Yeah.
There's there's a song with Kanye, Rihanna, and Paul McCartney. It's called Four
Mhm.
Five Seconds.
Okay.
There's a line in that song that I love that Rihanna sings, and she says, "All of my kindness has been taken for weakness." And I think about
Uh,
vulnerability in that way. People
yeah.
think that if you show up and don't know all the things, or if you are kind to someone, then all of a sudden that means that you're weak. No, it
Yeah.
actually shows a level of strength to be able to say, I don't know, or I don't understand, it's a strength to be able to show up that way. So I
It
think
is.
that song, whenever I think about vulnerability, that line plays in my head constantly.
Yeah. My colleague is sharing love that song. I'll have to go check it out. So,
It's a great song.
no, I do love this amplification of the value of vulnerability. And what's coming to mind for me as it relates to engagement is imagine how many people who aren't in those leadership roles, who
Yep.
are also experiencing a lot of vulnerability, and they don't have the power behind their influence within the organization to feel like maybe grace would be extended if they were to just kind of say, I don't know this, knowing that maybe someone expects them to know it, or maybe that they should know it. So, how much productivity is lost, and
Yeah.
how many outcomes are having to or missing the mark
Yeah.
because someone is just not vulnerable enough to be able to say, look, I need help here. I don't
Right.
know what this is. And so I think we have to think about it from the perspective of what are the implications, the practical implications to the day to day
Yep.
within these organizations, if we're keeping vulnerability as something that we're not encouraging and welcoming and supporting people through.
Yep.
So, so I love that. Okay, so once again, we have about 8 minutes left. If you have any questions, comments, make sure that you are using the raise hand feature if you're joining us via Zoom, or you're placing them into the chat. Um, Andrea Payne just said, I love the expression vulnerability is a superpower. Yeah, I like that too. Yeah,
Yep. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Kindness should not be mistaken for weakness, and vulnerability is absolutely a superpower. It takes a lot to lean into that. Okay, so I want to go to another question. And this time I want to talk about your consulting work. I know that you spent some time doing this work on your own, and while now you're back kind of in-house. So in your consulting work, I know that you've seen some dangers of promoting high performers who aren't necessarily good people leaders. And I do hear this a lot. I'm like, this person is great at their job in terms of executing. So automatically they got promoted to a people leader. And it's like, oh, wait. We didn't even think about the importance of, can they lead a team?
Right.
And it's
So
like, yep, that's critical. And so I want to take a moment just to lean into this. What are some early signs that someone isn't ready to lead, and how can we start reframing the promotion criteria to really make sure we are intentionally thinking about the holistic aspect of what that promotional role looks like and entails?
I think we should assume anybody that you're going to promote does not know how to lead or manage, which
I
are
think
complete.
so too. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
I just because you are good at your day job and because you can crush it in what we hired you to do as an organization does not relate in any way, shape, or form to your ability to manage or lead people. Um, One of the things that we're starting at LNW is a boot camp for managers, right? What are some of the things that you need to know how to do as a people leader that we're going to assume you don't? And if you do, great, then this will be some additive stuff to it. How to have difficult conversations,
Yes.
right? How to give feedback, good or bad. How do you create an inclusive culture? These are the things that we assume because you can put the widget together that you can teach, and you can teach other people how to do the widget. That's not a problem, but that's a teacher. That's not a manager. Very
Mhm.
different skill sets. So I think we should start from the people who are good at their jobs. If we promote them, we need to give them the skills and the tools to be able to manage and lead people. And just
Yeah. I totally agree. Don't make that assumption. And I also believe that one way to make it a bit more palatable for those who could take a little bit of offense to, well, I know how to manage people and they have their own story,
yep,
is that, well, maybe you do, but in this culture, we have a certain way about it that really aligns with our value set and aligns with the kind of the outputs. And so we need to make sure that you're trained our way. And I think that's important too, because not all managers are created equal. Someone could manage vastly different,
mhm,
and maybe they are executing that management style across the board, across all of their people that fall under their direct report. And again, as we've said today, this really is about getting to know your people, and you may have to adjust a little bit according to what the support needs are of the individuals. And so, yeah, don't assume that. And a lot of organizations have gotten smart to where they do have a kind of a manager boot camp of some sort to where automatically that is built in. But I'll tell you, I think I hear more of situations where people have been placed in a management role and did not know where to begin. It was like,
no.
I'm here because I'm good at my job. That's all I can tell you. But all this other stuff, ugh. So we have to be careful about that. We have to be careful about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I want to try to squeeze in another quick question before then I'll give you the final moment or two to close this out in whatever way that feels appropriate to you. But you've navigated leadership as a Jewish mother. You told us before that you are a mother of seven, a consultant, now
No,
as a
hold on.
chief
No, two.
two. Did you say two? I thought you said seven.
Could you imagine? No, please. Seven. Girl, I wouldn't be standing up here if I would.
Oh, wow. Okay. You know what? Because I
I'm
was I was feeling really impressed. I was like, wow. And she went through seven tattoos of each child's name on her ribs. That is impressive.
two kids, and they're both their names are on my ribs, but no, not seven. I have seven tattoos. One of them has my two kids' names.
That is it. That is it. I heard the seven tattoos, and then I went to the seven kids too.
Fantastic.
Maybe both were a little jarring for me. So I was like, okay, seven to seven. Okay, great. Seven tattoos, two kids. Okay, so Jewish mother of two, a consultant, chief people officer, a lot of years spent in academia.
Yeah.
And I often am so intrigued by how people's different experiences and their different identities layered together help shape the way in which they show up to the work that they do. And particularly connecting it to the work of inclusion and belonging and equity. And so I would love for you to take a moment to share a little bit on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I grew up uh, in New York. A very strong grandmother who took me to temple, Orthodox temple. As a matter of fact, women sat separate from men. It was very, very stringent kind of experience. But the what she taught me were the seven values of Judaism, two of which have resonated and have really been the things that have driven me in my life and my work. One is tzedakah, the other is tikkun olam. So
Mhm.
tzedakah is about giving back. In what
Mhm.
ways and in what parts of the world in what ways and in what behaviors can I give back to the world um, so that I make it better than it is? The tikkun olam is to repair the world. So,
Mm.
how do I do that in my little corner of the world? So, both of these things work together in how do I create cultures of inclusion and belonging in organizations and provide access for underrepresented groups that may not normally have access to finance, right? Or to whatever work that I'm doing. So, it really is a guiding principle for me in everything that I do.
I love that. That is so beautiful. I almost feel like we probably just end right there, but I don't want to deny you of the opportunity to close this out with anything else that you're having a lot of energy around that you weren't able to express. And before I do so, I just want to thank you for being here with us today. I want to thank this audience for showing up and your engagement. And if you found this conversation to be useful, I hope that you will share it out with others. Replace your LinkedIn information into the website as well as your website. So hope folks will connect with you there. But close us out in your own way, Dr. Roz.
I think I would close it out with that. I gotta be on, I gotta be
Okay.
honest, Dr. Nika. It's how do we have, and particularly for those of us in places of power and privilege, we have a responsibility to do better, to make things better. And it doesn't have to be grandiose kinds of Nobel Prize winning stuff. But what do you
Yeah,
do on a daily basis to help create and make the world a little bit better? So
I love it. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. We hope you all have a great, safe weekend. We hope to see you back again next week for another episode of Intentional Conversations podcast. And we appreciate you being a part of our community. Take care. Bye bye.
thank you, everyone.